investors in Wisconsin. Yeah, I see some red and white out there. Today we're all Badgers, right? Right. Well, I want to thank you again for coming. Around our country, the American dream is under fierce attack. Instead of creating jobs, Republicans are giving tax breaks to corporations and the very rich. Instead of helping everyone hit hardest by the economic crisis, Republicans are cutting funding for education, police, emergency response, and vital human services. Now, the American dream is slipping out of reach for more and more of us. And remember, they call it class warfare when we fight back. Are you ready to fight? Yes! All right, we demand an end on the attack to workers' rights and public services across the country. Now, this thing's giving me fits. We demand investment in creating decent jobs for the 15 million people who desperately want to work. That includes 280,000 unemployed Virginians. We can do better than that, right? Yeah! We demand that the super rich and the powerful corporations, including the bailed out Wall Street banks and big companies, pay their fair share. Yeah! Instead of cheating our treasury out of billions of dollars in subsidies, $40 billion in subsidies for oil and gas. They really need it, don't they? No. And $100 billion a year they hide in offshore bank accounts, tax havens. Not only do Republicans shield the rich from paying taxes, they recently proposed over $100 billion in cuts in the federal budget, which is going to hit Virginians hard. Look at what's in the budget that Eric Cantor and John Boehner and that crew proposed. They want to cut $32 million from K through 12. That's what their proposal is. They want to cut $107 million, this is in Virginia, for Pell Grants, affecting 178,000 college students. They want to cut $2.8 million for job training grants. And there's $3.1 million for job training. That's 38,000 unemployed Virginians who won't get help. $21 million they want to cut for clean drinking water and clean clean water. The James River out here will not get cleaned up anymore from sewage treatment plants that need to be cleaned up there. So over the last few weeks, in Wisconsin, workers have been protesting against a bill that would cut vital services and take away workers' ability to collective bargain. It is absolutely critical for the health of America's middle class that workers are allowed to organize collectively to negotiate with their employers. Yeah. And if someone tells you that unions have never done anything for them, just ask them if they enjoy their 2-day weekend. Yeah. Which was hard fought and won by guess who? Labor union. Yeah, and here's the thing. This isn't just about Wisconsin. In Washington, as I said, in Washington, D.C., Republicans are using the erect economy as an excuse to slash vital programs and hurt workers. In Congress, they're talking about massive cuts I mentioned earlier. Also, they want to totally defund NPR. No! And Goldman Sachs just put out a report that says that the Republican proposal would cut economic growth in half. Over the next year, it can mean the loss of up to 1 million jobs. You know what John Boehner's response to that was? So be it! That's what he said. He doesn't care how many of us are unemployed, how many of us are hurt, how many of us are homeless. Now they're saying if they don't get their budget cut, they may shut down the federal government. So that would be a layoff of hundreds of thousands of federal workers, and it would mean the Social Security checks may not even get mailed, and Medicare payments for medicine. We cannot allow the American dream to continue to be taken away from us, because right now it is slipping away. We're here to say enough is enough. And we won't allow the Chamber of Commerce and Republicans to make all workplaces dictatorships, will we? No! So it's time for our government to work for us and not just for corporations and millionaires.
I want my country back.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. It's time for our government to work for regular Americans. It's time to rebuild the American dream. We're joining the Kettle Rebellion today. Yeah. We refuse to accept cuts and rights hard fought and earned, and standing for the idea that in a crisis, Americans turn to each other and not own each other.
That's right.
And let me wrap up by saying, remember what Martin Luther King Jr. said in his letter from the Birmingham jail. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it tends toward justice. But it will bend thusly only if we do our part in the eternal struggle for liberty and justice for all.
In Leviticus it tells us, in chapter 19 it says, "You shall be holy, for I, Adonai, your God, am holy." And how are we holy? Well, these are the best verses from my perspective. You shall not defraud your fellow, you shall not commit robbery, do not hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. Jewish tradition, and actually Christian tradition as well. I wonder what Jesus would cut. He was one of my boys, but that's okay. We have understood that we stand behind workers, and we stand behind the ability of the American worker to be lifted up. The worker is what makes people succeed in this country. How does that work? 100 years ago, over 100 women died in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City. And only because of the existence of unions after that were they protected, were they able to have safety, were they able to have decent wages. And the Jewish community has stood behind fair wages and fair benefits ever since, and even before. Why? Because the worker is what makes things happen. In our tradition is this: collective bargaining is the way in which we, who are not of the rich, have the ability to lift each person up. Religiously, we have the responsibility to understand that each human being is created equal. In the first creation story, it says humanity is created. Male and female, God created them. That means, first, God is both male and female, and that's an interesting story we may have to tell the legislature here. That's a different one. That's a different story. But the point is this: all are equal, all are the same in the eyes of the Eternal.
Yes.
All budgets are moral documents. When you steal from the poor to give to the rich, when you steal from the worker to give to the corporate greedhead, you violate all religious values in the West. Only when we treat each other and lift up those who have the rights that they have now, and do not accept those who say, "We will tell you what to do," it becomes a time as it was in Nehemiah. Nehemiah had the people come to them and say, "Our leaders are stealing our rights, our works, they are enslaving us." And so the power of people, all the Jewish community stood together, and Nehemiah brought the leaders in front of them and said, "God says you're wrong. this is what you have to do. You do not take from those who have been promised their rightful wages, because, let's face it, in collective bargaining, those rights are earned. Pensions are earned, and when you take that, you steal. When you give $117 million in tax breaks the day before you say we have a tax problem in Wisconsin, then you have committed moral failure. It is a moral issue, and everything that goes on in Wisconsin and happens here is moral. And when we stand on the side of morality, we stand united and correctly. Richard Hatcher.
Use the microphone.
All right, yes, my name is Richard Hatch. Not Hatcher, but that's close enough. That's good enough. And I am the president of the Central Virginia Labor Federation. I'm also the president of Communications Workers of America of Virginia. Okay.
And aim it up a little. There you go.
So I'm also the president of the Communications Workers of America of Virginia State Council. And I stand here today as a proud union member. Now, Joe called me last night. He says, I need you to keep this to 3 minutes. And that's hard for a union guy to do, actually. So you got a megaphone there. All right. Use it. So it's hard for a union guy to keep it to 3 minutes to tell the problems that we're facing today. So I prepared a few words. So today we rally here as we do across the country. And in Wisconsin, what we see is we see the start of a movement. We see, as workers, and we stand here, we stand together with the public workers that are also under attack, not only in Wisconsin, but also in Ohio, Missouri, New Jersey, New York,
And Virginia!
Virginia. But in Wisconsin, we see a governor that cut taxes for business, and then to make up for his self-created budget crisis, is now coming after the workers. Claiming that to fix these problems, they need the workers' pay. The workers' benefits. And the biggest budget lie, pensions. You see, as most people know here, pensions are deferred compensation. You make a choice. The workers make a choice to give up a portion of their pay so that it would be there for you when it's time for you to retire and you can no longer work. They are not taxpayer handouts. What is happening in Wisconsin, as we said, is not unique. All across the country there is a trend of tax cuts for the business and the wealthy. We saw this in the bailouts of the banks and in Wall Street.
Corporate socialism.
Exactly. We saw this in the extension of Bush's tax cuts for the rich. We see this in state houses across this country, including that one. Now these handouts create a problem. How do you balance a budget when you've given the money away?
You get it back.
That's the answer, but that's not their answer. Their solution, let's blame the workers. Let's lie and say they have to pay their fair share.
Yes.
What about the fair share of the wealthy? What about the fair share of the corporations who were paid back with tax breaks on their profits? Profits. After expenses were taken care of. That's what we're talking here. Profits. That's what they pay taxes on. Well, working families aren't taxed on profits or disposable income. And the fair share that governors like Walker, Christie, and McDonnell, the fair share they're talking about pay for little things, you know, like food and clothes and housing and medication. Well, I say we cannot, should not, and will not balance the budget off the backs of the middle class. Well, let's go back to Wisconsin for a moment and see what this is really about. In Wisconsin, the workers that would have been affected, they've agreed to the governor's concessions on pay and benefits. They said, okay. What did he say? That's right. He said not good enough.
He wants blood.
He called it a short-term solution. When he did so, he made it clear to the country that this is a war. A war on unions. On the ability of workers to join together for a voice in the workplace. A war on the workers in this country to have rights. Workers should have rights. Workers should have rights. Hopefully McDonald can hear that. They should have rights to safe working conditions. Fair pay. Benefits. To work in a harassment-free environment. To know that you're treated fairly. Is this wrong?
No! It's American.
And
American.
representation.
And it's what unions do. They give you and your co-workers a collective voice.
Yeah.
To say that we'll be happy to work hard as long as you agree to pay us fairly and treat us well.
Yeah.
Governor Walker, he's done us a favor.
Yes.
He has created a situation that forces Americans to ask themselves what is right and what is wrong. To no longer put our heads in the sand, but to wake up to reality.
Wake up!
He has started what the president of my international union has called an awakening. Not just an awakening of union members, but all Americans. We've been given a choice to accept what we are given by corporations and the wealthy elite.
No!
Whose sole purpose is to make money. Courage of the Wisconsin 14. We ask these politicians to not just sign a letter, to say a few words, to send an email. We ask them to take action. We ask them to actively seek to protect the workers' rights to form unions. To give workers those rights, even in states like Virginia, where they currently cannot have them in the public sector. We ask them to fight for the ability of all workers to have a voice at work and to ensure that all workers are heard. We ask them very simply to fight for the continued existence of the middle class. In the union movement, we realized a long time ago that once workers are united, they never will be defeated. This is a war on the working class, and the question has become, what will you do? What will you do? What will you do? We stand together today, union and non-union. We represent all cultures, all races, all beliefs, and we form the best of America. We have the strength and the conviction to make a change and fight for what we believe in. There comes a time, and that time is now, when a society must make a decision to act decisively to ensure the future that we deserve. If we don't, that future will be decided for us. The fight for the choice and the economic well-being of our children is here. I ask all of you to fight hard, to stay strong, and to remember that we are morally and justly doing the right thing. From the Central Virginia Labor Federation that represents the union members in Richmond and all across Central Virginia, thank you for being here.
I am Kitty Boydott, President of the Virginia Education Association, and I stand with my colleagues in Wisconsin. Many of you may not know, by virtue of a 1977 Virginia Supreme Court decision, Commonwealth versus Arlington County Board, and the Prohibition Section 40.1-57.2 in the Code of Virginia, Virginia's teachers and support personnel are prohibited from the right to collective bargaining. I stand with my colleagues in Wisconsin because I know this prohibition has been bad for the children and school employees of Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, the working conditions of teachers are the learning conditions of children. Because we have no collective bargaining, Virginia, the 7th wealthiest state in the nation, ranks 38th in this nation in funding for children.
Where's the money going?
Because we have no collective bargaining, Virginia, the 7th wealthiest state in the nation, pays its teachers a salary $5,351 below the national average. Because we have no collective bargaining, Virginia's teachers pay up to $13,800 out of pocket for family health insurance. Because we have no collective bargaining, we cannot protect our children from large class sizes and inadequate learning materials. The lack of collective bargaining weakens my association, making us less effective in our advocacy for children and public education. Sometimes I am proud to champion the Virginia way. In regard to collective bargaining, it is clear that Wisconsin should not go the Virginia way. Workers in Wisconsin, and yes, workers in Virginia, deserve the dignity and respect they gain when they sit across the table from management to discuss wages, benefits, and working conditions. I stand with the teachers of Wisconsin, and I stand against the billionaires driving Scott Walker and his buddies who are working to destroy America's middle class, America's public servants, and America's public schools. Thank you very much.
I've also been here, living in Virginia, for over 40 years. I'm old. Actually, we run a group called Cena Foundation that works with dying people. We work with an organization called Cena Foundation that works with dying people. But today we're here to talk to you about living our lives, our times. The teacher before me just said, this is about collective bargaining. We know we're broke, we know we have to pay, but we cannot give up collective bargaining.
No way!
My father was a union organizer in Wisconsin from the 20s through the 50s. He told me a lot of stories about why he did what he did. I'm going to tell you one. Do you all look at your toilets when you go? Have you seen Kohler? Kohler is an expensive toilet, and it is built on the backs of labor. Well, my father worked for Kohler Company, and he worked the night shift in the foundry. And long after we got all the rights, they still didn't clean up the foundry. Long after my father left the working force. But back when he was working, he worked the night shift in the middle of the winter. And he worked on a machine many, many, many feet above him in the winter night. The heat, from what heat there was, rose to the ceiling, and the snow and ice melted and dripped down next to his machine. As he worked, he could see his breath, and next to him was a puddle of ice. And one night the foreman came to him, and said, I want you to go over to the stables, because in those days there weren't so many tractors and infernal combustion engines. And he went to the stables to pick up a tool. He opened the door and he said it was like somebody hit me in the face with a shovel. It was so hot in the stables. The stables were steam heated. My father had a bit of a temper. I have a bit of a temper. It makes me angry just knowing it. He went and got the tool, went back into the factory, blowing steam into the air. He said to his foreman, how can you do that? The horses are warm and we're freezing. You know what that foreman said? He said, if you, Otto, my father was obviously German, Otto, if you get sick and die tomorrow night, we will have another worker here. If that horse dies, we have to pay $25. My father said, oh, this doesn't work, and he began organizing. And what happened then? When they struck the Kohler Company? If you will check your records, the longest strikes in history are from that Kohler Company. And one afternoon, when my father and my uncle were on the picket line, there was a man standing between them, and from inside the walls of Kohler, and by the way, this is not unusual, a shot came out and hit the man between my father and my uncle and killed him. Killed him. People died so that we could have collective bargaining. Let me tell you something. They made a huge mistake when they put this on the table. Because there is a line drawn now. We cannot allow this to happen. My father also, in the 60s, we had a commune in D.C., and occasionally we were working in the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement, and we'd take a whole bunch of hippies up to Wisconsin. And my father would see us coming, he'd just shake his head and say, oh, God, what is this boy into? But we would tell him about the work we would do, and one of the last things I remember him telling me about the work that we were doing, he said, he said two things. One is, understand, these are wonderful things you are doing, but you will start to make real progress when you realize this isn't about civil rights or the war, this is about class warfare. And it is time, he said, they have the best people apart. The black people and the brown people and the yellow people, not just here, around the world. Have you noticed what's happening? Yeah. You think you're not connected to the people in Egypt?
We are!
Did you know that a 20-year-old boy who helped lead the revolution in Egypt 4 days ago put up a banner in Trafalgar Square that said, "We support the workers in Wisconsin"? The other thing my father said is, make no mistake about this. We have won, and they had. Everybody in this crowd owes your life, the way you live, to the dead man laying there, to my father, to my uncle, to your fathers, to your grandfathers. You owe your life. Is this the time to stand up and do this? Yes, it is. Is this the time that you're going to rise up? Yeah. We've been quiet for 40 years. That's right. I haven't been in the streets since 1972, but I will go to the streets now. Yeah. Will you go to the streets? My father said, if you let them, they will take this all back. They will not stop till you stop them. Understand, if we don't do it now, they'll do it to another union. And they'll do it till... No, it's the easiest to stop it now. Not only that, we will have collective bargaining for the teachers in this state.